fabled heat, where magic meets desire. Subscribe to ignite the fantasy.
The throne room lay in ruins, smoke curling around the shattered pillars like ghostly serpents. The marble floor, once polished to a mirror-like sheen, was now a scarred battlefield, stained dark with blood and ash. I could still hear the echo of clashing steel, the guttural cries of the fallen, and the distant rumble of the Empire's walls trembling under siege. My breath came in ragged bursts, each inhale tasting of soot and iron. I knelt beside him, my fingers trembling as I pressed a makeshift bandage, rough linen torn from my own cloak, against the deep gash in his side. The wound was a jagged river of crimson, pulsing with each shallow heartbeat. The acrid smell of smoke clung to my nostrils, mingling with the metallic tang of his blood, and I could feel the heat of the flames licking the stone columns, casting flickering shadows that danced across his pale face. "You're going to be okay," I said, my voice rough with emotion, the words barely rising above the distant wail of sirens that seemed to mourn the Empire's fall. My throat was raw, my tongue dry, but I forced the promise out of me like a prayer. "I won't let you die." He gave me a weak smile, his eyes glassy with pain yet still bright with that stubborn fire that had always drawn me in. "You always were stubborn," he whispered, his breath hot against my ear, the scent of his sweat mingling with the ash. I wanted to laugh, to break the tension with something familiar, but the sound that escaped was a hoarse cough. "Someone has to be. You're too reckless for your own good," I managed, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. His hand found mine, cold and trembling, his fingers wrapping around my wrist with a grip that was both a plea and a promise. "I couldn't have done this without you. You're my strength, my reason to keep fighting," he said, his voice a ragged whisper that seemed to echo off the broken walls. My heart clenched at his words, a fierce protectiveness surging through me like a tide. I had loved him for years, hidden in the shadows of duty and fear, never daring to voice the truth. Now, with death looming over us like a dark cloud, the dam of restraint shattered. "I love you," I whispered, the confession barely audible over the distant clamor of the battlefield. My voice cracked, each syllable a fragile thread. His eyes widened, then softened with a tenderness that made my breath catch. "I know," he said softly, his gaze locking onto mine with an intensity that made the world narrow to just the two of us. "I've felt it too, in the way you look at me, the way you touch me. I just never thought." He winced as another wave of pain washed over him, his body shuddering. I pressed my lips to his forehead, tasting the salt of his sweat, feeling the heat of his skin against my own. "Don't talk, save your strength. We'll get through this together," I promised, though a part of me feared the lie I was telling. The enemy was closing in, their torches flickering in the darkness beyond the shattered arches, and we were wounded, trapped in the ruins of our once mighty empire. The night air grew colder, the wind slipping through the broken windows, carrying with it the distant cries of civilians and the metallic clang of swords. I could hear the faint thud of marching boots, the rhythm of an approaching army that would not stop until we were both dead. I forced my mind to focus on the present, on the feel of his hand in mine, on the steady rise and fall of his breathing. My thoughts raced. How had we come to this? The empire we had built together, the promises whispered in secret chambers, the nights spent planning a future that now seemed like ash. All of it hung in the balance, and yet in this moment, all that mattered was the man before me. "We need to move," I said, my voice steadier now, the urgency cutting through the haze of pain. "There's a tunnel beneath the throne room, the old escape route the architects built for emergencies. It might still be intact." He nodded weakly, his eyes flickering with a mixture of hope and exhaustion. "Lead the way," he rasped, his hand still gripping mine as if it were an anchor. I rose slowly, feeling the weight of my own armor pressing against my bruised ribs. The stone beneath my boots was slick with blood and oil, each step a reminder of the carnage that had unfolded. I could feel the heat of the fire still licking the walls, the crackle of flames echoing in the cavernous space. As we moved toward the hidden doorway, I couldn't help but glance back at the throne, its golden seat toppled and shattered, the crown that once symbolized our rule now a twisted mess of metal. The sight filled me with a bitter resolve. The empire was broken, but its spirit lived in us, in the promise we made to each other. The tunnel entrance was concealed behind a fallen tapestry, its colors faded to gray. I pushed aside the heavy drapery, revealing a narrow stone stairway that descended into darkness. The air grew cooler, the scent of earth replacing the acrid smoke. "Stay close," I whispered, guiding him with my free hand. His grip tightened around my wrist, his fingers digging into my skin as if to remind me that he was still there, still fighting. The steps were uneven, the stones slick with moisture. I could hear the distant thud of enemy soldiers above, their shouts growing louder as they searched for survivors. My mind raced, cataloging every possible threat, every hidden corner where we could hide. We emerged into a small cavern, the walls lined with ancient runes that glowed faintly with a bluish hue. The light was soft, almost soothing, a stark contrast to the chaos we had left behind. I could feel the pulse of magic in the air, a lingering echo of the spells that once protected this place. He collapsed onto a stone slab, his breath shallow, his eyes closing briefly as pain surged through him. I knelt beside him, pulling a small vial of healing salve from my satchel, a gift from the alchemists of the western provinces. "Hold on," I said, my voice a low murmur. I applied the salve to his wound, feeling the coolness spread, the sting of the herbs mixing with the heat of his blood. The pain in his eyes softened, his shoulders relaxing just enough for me to see the faint smile return. "You always know how to make me feel better," he murmured, his voice barely more than a breath. I couldn't help but smile back despite the tears threatening to spill. "That's what partners do," I replied, the words feeling both a promise and a confession. We lay there for what felt like an eternity, the cavern's glow casting gentle shadows on our faces. I listened to the distant sounds of battle, the clanging of swords, the cries of the wounded, and the low rumble of the Empire's walls collapsing. In the quiet, my thoughts turned inward. I remembered the first time I saw him, standing on the balcony of the palace, his hair catching the sunrise, his eyes scanning the horizon with a mixture of curiosity and determination. I remembered the nights we spent planning reforms, the whispered conversations in the garden where we confessed our hopes and fears. I remembered the moment my heart first recognized his as more than a comrade, as something deeper, something forbidden. Now, with the world crumbling around us, those memories felt like a lifeline, a thread pulling me back from the abyss. I realized that love was not a luxury we could afford in times of war, it was the very thing that gave us the strength to endure. "We have to keep moving," I said, gently nudging him upright. "The tunnel leads to the old catacombs. From there, we can surface near the river. It's our best chance to escape the siege." He nodded, determination flickering in his eyes despite the pain. "Then let's not waste any more time," he whispered, his voice steadier now. We descended deeper into the catacombs, the air growing colder, the walls damp with centuries of neglect. The sound of water dripping echoed, creating a rhythm that matched our heartbeat. Occasionally, a distant howl of a wounded animal or a stray soldier's shout reminded us that we were not alone. As we walked, I kept stealing glances at him, noting the way his jaw clenched when the pain flared, the way his breath came in shallow bursts, the way his hand never left mine. Each small detail reinforced the resolve building inside me. "When we get out of this," I said, my voice low, "we'll rebuild, not just the Empire, but everything we lost. We'll make a place where love isn't hidden, where we can be ourselves." He smiled, a genuine, weary smile that lit up his bruised face. "I want that more than anything," he replied, his fingers tightening around mine, "and I want you by my side always." The words hung in the stale air, a promise that felt both fragile and unbreakable. I felt a surge of warmth spread through my chest, a fire that no enemy could extinguish. We finally reached a narrow opening that led to a hidden exit, a stone archway covered in vines. The night sky was a tapestry of stars, the moon a thin crescent casting silver light over the river that flowed beyond the walls. We emerged onto a rocky ledge, the cold wind whipping around us, the sound of rushing water filling our ears. The river glimmered, reflecting the moonlight like a ribbon of liquid silver. He leaned against the stone, his breath ragged, his eyes scanning the horizon. I wrapped my arms around his shoulders, pulling him close, feeling his heart beat against my chest. "We made it," I whispered, my voice trembling with relief and awe. He turned his head, his forehead resting against mine. "We did," he said softly, "and now we have a chance to start anew." I pressed a kiss to his lips, gentle at first, then deeper, as if trying to seal the promise we had made amidst the ruins. The taste of his blood still lingered on his skin, a reminder of the battle we had survived. As we stood there hand in hand, the river's current humming a lullaby, I felt a fierce protectiveness surge within me. No matter what lay ahead, whether enemies, politics, or the ghosts of our past, we would face it together. The night stretched on, the stars bearing silent witness to our vow. I knew the road ahead would be fraught with danger, that rebuilding an empire required more than swords and magic. It required trust, love, and unyielding resolve. But in that moment, with his hand warm in mine and the moonlight bathing us in silver, I felt an unshakable certainty. We would survive. We would rise from the ashes, not just as rulers, but as two souls bound by love, ready to forge a future where the empire could truly thrive. And as the river sang its endless song, I whispered once more, "I love you," my voice steady, my heart full. He answered with a soft, contented sigh, his eyes closing as he leaned into me, trusting that together we could weather any storm. The night was still, the world around us quiet, but within us burned a fire that no darkness could dim. We were wounded, we were broken, but we were also whole, two halves of a whole that would rebuild, love, and live on. And so, with the river as our witness and the stars as our guide, we stepped forward into the unknown, ready to write the next chapter of our story, one of love, survival, and the rebirth of an empire.